Hello and welcome to Henry Weston's Old Mate. I am your host, Stuart, also known as Henry Weston. And we are talking turf today. I am joined by Peter McCormick from over in Vermont in the USA. Peter is a turf industry veteran, you might say, in the United States, but will openly admit he's never worked a day on a golf course in his life. So this is going to be an interesting chat. We're going to talk Peter's story. So there's going to be some talk about mental health within the industry, talk about depression, and towards the end of the industry, we'll chat about Peter's decision he took a few years ago to give up drinking alcohol. That's a bit of specialist subject of mine, so I'm looking forward to that. So let's get to it. Peter, hello, how are you?
Hi, Stu. Yeah, I'm good. Looking forward to the chat today.
Yeah, so am I. So obviously, I could introduce you. I've got everything in front of me to do that, but I'm going to ask you to do that. So if you could just give us a little introduction about who you are and what you've done, really.
Well, a brief bio, sure. Let's see. I guess, well, I have a degree in plant science and business management from Rutgers University, class of 1976. That'll give you an idea how old I am. I'm 67 years old. That would be, in golf terms, that's sort of playing up the 18th fairway of life, I guess. I've been married for 44 years to my best friend. I have 3 rescue dogs. I have 2 grown daughters who are off on their own and successful in their own right. I do live in Vermont, which those who don't know it is up in the top right corner, tucked up almost against the Canadian border. We're about 2.5 hours south of Montreal. Spend our summers at a cottage in the Canadian Maritimes over on the Bay of Fundy, so we enjoy that. I work there. You know, it's just kind of a different view out the window, but nonetheless, it's very much a Zen place for me. It's place to really let the hustle and bustle of the real world go by. I started TURFNET back in 1994. After spending 10 years in sales management for both Jacobson and Toro dealers. So I come from the machinery side of equipment, as we would call it over here, but over there, I suppose it's machinery side of things.
Yeah.
And the overall impetus of starting TURFNET was getting sacked at my old job at the Toro dealer. I had 2 young kids, needed a job, always wanted to have a business of my own. And I had this idea. I actually woke up in bed about 10 days prior to being shown the door there. This was right around Christmas time, 1993. I had this idea to start an information sharing service, if you will, for superintendents. Just for a little contrast, this was before the internet or before the web existed.
Yeah,
the internet existed at the time on a dial-up white text on black background kind of a thing. But so I started with a print newsletter, which existed for the next 20 years. But about a year after I started, we started online with just a dial-up service into my home. 1 telephone line at a time, people dialing in long distance, which seems incredibly archaic by today's standards. But the year after that, we went on the web, and 28 years later, here we are.
So just for those listening and watching it, so TURFNET is now a very established business, but what it allows you to interact, it allows people to interact, but it allows people to advertise, buy and sell. Give us a little bit more of a...
Yeah, there's a wide variety of things that we do, we have a private members only area. There's a membership component if somebody wants to take advantage of that. It's a couple $100 a year. We have a private, we call the TURFNET forum discussion area, which is where a lot of the conversation about mental health on our site really has taken place over the years. We have job listings, used equipment listings. Those are free for members, and they can be had on a fee basis by anybody else. So there is a private members only component, but then there's a much larger public side to turfnet.com. So in addition to the job listings, used equipment listings, we have webinars, podcasts, blogs, quite a nice variety of contributors. Paul McCORMICK has really changed the industry with his Mindful Superintendent blog, which he started with us back in 2012, I think. Dave Wilbur's been on that. A lot of guys on the web will know of Dave. And Kevin Ross does a lot of video work for us. Randy Wilson was the first one to poke fun at the industry, particularly the alphabets, as he calls them, which would be the organizations that have a lot of acronyms.
We have one of those over here.
Yeah, well, hey, some of them deserved or should have had fun poked at them, but it's all good natured. But there's a message in everything that he does. He's very focused on what he calls skeletal golf, really drilling down to the core components of or the things that are really necessary, separating the wheat from the chaff, so to speak, in terms of making an enjoyable but yet financially viable golf course operation. So that's kind of what we do. We have about 1,500 paid members, but then we have 500,000 page views on our website every month.
Yeah.
So, we do have advertising. So our revenue sources are membership, advertising. We've had, until COVID hit, we had an annual members trip over to typically Ireland or Scotland to play golf and meet with course managers over there and do shed tours and all that kind of stuff. So quite a bit more than might meet the eye right at the, at first glance.
Yeah, well, I mean, I myself signed up for the free membership a couple of weeks ago, and I can certainly vouch. If you head to the website, there is hours and hours and days of material accessible, with a simple basic login. So there is so much stuff. If turf interests you and you want to see how they do it on the other side of the water, those listening and watching this in the UK, certainly head on, log in and have a look around TURFNET. Peter, I've read some of your articles in the build up to this. You have described yourself on more than one occasion as a man who wears his heart on his sleeve. He's not afraid to speak up and say what he's thinking. You've said that a primary focus of yourself and through TURFNET is to sort of raise the awareness of the potential mental health battles for superintendents over in the USA, and some of that is based on a personal experience or battle with depression. So if you could give us a little rundown of your own personal experience with depression, and then we could get into a chat about more specific within the turf industry and sort of those in charge of golf courses.
Sure. As I said, the match that lit the fire so far as starting TURFNET resulted from me losing my job, which was just a gut punch. When you have two young kids and a wife and a mortgage and all that stuff, and all of a sudden, what's the future going to bring? probably the low point in that whole experience was when I got home that day from receiving the news. My older daughter, who I think was 11 or 12 or something at the time, she says, "Dad, are we going to be poor now?" Which, you chuckle, but it wasn't funny at the time. It was, I said, "Nope, we're going to be fine," and that was a classic case of having to dig deep, pull myself up by the bootstraps and get started. It was, if I didn't do it, nobody was going to do it. And so this was the start of the rest of my life. I have had, looking back, I have had a little bit of a struggle with depression my entire life. And part of that is genetic. I know again, looking back, 2020 hindsight, my father had depression, and his mother, my grandmother did, not recognized, diagnosed, or treated. And I know one of my brothers and my sister suffer from depression, and a couple of her kids do. So there's definitely a genetic link to all of this. I can think back through periods of my life when, I'd be observing a jovial conversation between a couple people who were laughing and chuckling and that kind of thing. And I remember thinking to myself, I wish I could laugh like that. Even today, I don't laugh a lot for whatever reason, unless I was drunk at the time. Then it was all fun and games. Yeah. But so I started TURFNET and went for, I think it was 2001, 2002 when I really had the feet kicked out from under me. I lived in New Jersey at the time, about 50 miles outside of New York City. Yeah. And so 9/11 hit, and we lived close enough where if you went up in the hills, you could see the smoke in the distance. And of course, there was a ripple effect through our community because a lot of the people who lived there, worked in the city and some in the trade center. Yeah. So that, that was, I overdosed on news coverage for that, admittedly. And then that same year, 2001, I actually sold TURFNET to Turnstile Publishing Company, who published Golf Week magazine. They're down in Orlando, Florida. I had 3 different companies sort of pursuing me. One of them just made no sense. Another one couldn't make any sense out of the money aspect of it. And with Turnstile, it turned out. Some of the caveats from my standpoint was I'm not going to move to Orlando. I don't particularly care. Florida is nice to visit, but I don't want to live there. Nor do I want to go in an office every day. I've worked at home for almost 30 years now. Yeah. So that happened, and there were a few issues in the beginning that, well, first of all, selling the business was like selling my firstborn child. I mean, it was, after all those hours and hours and hours, because when you're developing a business or even running a business, an existing business, your brain never stops. You're always thinking about solving problems, what's coming up next, that kind of thing. So that was sort of number 2 of the triple whammy for me. And the third one was my father passing away. He had gotten sick a few days after Christmas, 2001. Turned out it was pancreatic cancer, which of course is the kiss of death. Yeah. And he went from a big, robust guy with a zest for living to, eating baby food and having his diapers changed within 4 months. And 4.5 months later, he was dead. And that he lived in Chicago at the time with my mother. And so I only saw him once or twice a year, but that was just absolutely devastating to me. And I don't know whether it was more devastating because I had, this underlying layer of depression, or
Yeah.
whether that just really kicked me down the hill depression wise. But shortly after that, the thing that really made me realize that I need to get some help was that my older daughter was going out with a guy. She was in college at the time. She was going out with a guy who I liked. You know, we liked him. They decided to break up, and when she told us that night, I remember sitting on the edge of my bed and tears are running down my face. I said, "This is really weird, because I like the guy, but I don't like him this much."
Right.
And
it was an over the top reaction to the situation.
Yes, absolutely beyond what it should have been. And that, you know, I really embarked then on the process of trying to get some help. And I don't know how it is with your NHS over there, but the state of mental health care here in the States is just terrible. I lived in New Jersey at the time. I started with my family doctor, who prescribed Wellbutrin.
Okay.
See, I don't have anxiety. There are really two different kinds of depression. One is just sort of a sadness and an apathy and that kind of thing. There's another form of depression, of which anxiety and worry, that kind of thing, fear, is part of it. I don't worry about anything. I never really have.
Yeah.
So thankfully, that was something I didn't have to tackle or deal with. But so my doctor prescribed this, and I don't recall him ever giving me any guidance as to the fact that this is going to take 2 weeks to ramp up.
Right. Yeah.
You know, you take a pill like that, and you know, back in the days of Prozac and whatever, you know, they were incorrectly referred as happy pills or that kind of thing, where you think you take the pill and you'll feel better. Well, it doesn't work that way. It really takes, you know, 2, maybe even 3 weeks for the effect of this medication to kick in, and then you've got a range of dosages that need to be adjusted, and each one of those requires another couple of weeks to kick in. And I don't remember him giving me any of that guidance. So I know the first time, you know, I took it for a couple of weeks, and I said, "This is ridiculous. This isn't doing anything." And I think I stopped, as I remember. I ultimately found a psychiatrist who was sort of he was a little guy, a Korean doctor. I used to refer to him as the very short Korean doctor. But in any case, his thing was psychopharmacology and mixing and matching medications to find what was right for you. So he added some Cymbalta, which is duloxetine, to the Wellbutrin. And, you know, we played with dosages and all that kind of stuff. And I wound up at about 450 milligrams of Wellbutrin, which is the max.
Yeah.
And I think it was 60 milligrams of Cymbalta tops. And that seemed to work okay. What the medication does, in my instance anyway, it provided a floor at, say, about 40% of the emotional range. Yeah. So that, you know, I look at every day as sort of walking a balance beam or a tightrope. Right. And what the medication does, it puts that safety net at about 40% so that you don't really go down into the depths. Yeah. The problem is that it also lops off the top 15% or so of the emotional range. So you become a little bit numb. Yeah, I know exactly the feeling from personal experience. You don't get giddy happy, but you also don't you don't wind up in the fetal position, and can't get out of bed either. So
Yeah.
the medication's been good. I never really got into the psychotherapy component of it. I sort of resisted that for some reason or other, partly because I didn't know who to go to.
Right.
And that's a challenge to get started with somebody, because here, a therapist is somebody you're going to spill your guts out to.
Yeah.
And it's important to have somebody who, you can identify with and are comfortable with on a lot of different levels. So sort of fast forward, in 2008, we picked up and moved from New Jersey. We moved 300 miles north to Vermont. Now, Vermont's a very rural state. We only got 600,000 people in the entire state. The town I live in is 23 square miles and has 1,200 people. So it's, at one point we had more cows than people. But
I think,
case,
I think Wyoming's the only less populated state in the country. I did a bit of background reading. So you're, for a big country, you don't have too many neighbors. I'd like living there.
No, yeah, it's nice. I like the elbow room. We're one of eight houses on 160 acres, so we got plenty of room for the dogs to run and all of that.
Fantastic.
When I got up here, all of a sudden, because the very short Korean doctor couldn't see me any longer, he wouldn't refill my prescriptions. So I had to find somebody local to do that. Family doctor, nobody was taking new patients. Everybody was full. Psychiatrist, forget about it. Therapist, so I finally found a psychiatric nurse practitioner they are empowered to write prescriptions, and they're good. They're focused on the medications, the psychopharmacology component of it. And I got on a program with her to gradually reduce the amount of medication I was taking, because I was feeling too numb.
Yeah.
So then the next part of it was, and I had my ups and my downs, that kind of thing. There's a counseling service here within the county, and they have psychiatrists and psychologists and social worker therapists on staff. But in order to get with them, there's a 6-month waiting list.
Right.
Well, when you're getting ready to jump off a bridge,
yeah,
you don't have 6 months to wait, but I said, okay, I wasn't that bad. I said, okay, put me on the list. 6 months later, they called me back and said, so we have an opening with a psychiatrist that will see you, but you need to see a social worker first to get screened. Or actually, I think that had been prior. And that was fine. I got with the psychiatrist. So I go in, we talked for about an hour. She was a woman about my age, I guess. And it was good. Felt good. I was comfortable. And then she said, well, I've got good news and I've got bad news. Good news is you're here. Bad news is this is my last week. I'm retiring next week. And I'm thinking, you got to be kidding me. And that's when I said, all right, I've got to do something on my own here. And I'm going to jump ahead a little bit into my personal remaking, if you will, or my rebooting or personal reset. But out of desperation to find somebody to talk to, I found the music therapist.
Yeah.
Right in town here, and I had no idea what music therapy was. I'd heard about art therapy and dance therapy and that kind of thing. Ironically, I had done, this was, I don't know, about 3 years ago now. Ironically, I had started playing the guitar in about 7 years ago when I turned 60. At the prodding of some friends up at our summer place. And I also realized that I didn't have a bucket list. So why not? So I dived into that from scratch, taking online lessons and the rest of that. And that turned out to be what we sort of, I went to this music therapist, and some of our sessions were, talking about politics or that kind of stuff. All, that I know you guys over there have your political situations just about as bad as ours is over here. But the last 5 or 6 years have been just hair raising over here, as in my opinion anyway. But so we'd talk about that, or maybe some weeks we'd have an hour-long guitar lesson. He encouraged me to try the piano, which I did. And that's been great. Other times we maybe talk about song lyrics, things like that. But it was something that when I went and talked to him for 2 or 3 days afterwards, I felt better.
Yeah.
And the general consensus is among healthcare professionals that medication's fine, therapy's fine on its own, but when you combine the two of them, there's really a synergy involved. So where 1 + 1 = 3. So that's kind of where it is, with the depression.
Yeah.
Something I've been able to. Well, maybe we should just jump ahead a little bit and give an overview, or let me discuss some of the other things that I got involved in to sort of remake myself. So the music was big, particularly these last couple of years with the pandemic. It just provided a safe haven. When you're learning the guitar or the piano, you focus on it and you get lost within it.
Right.
To the exclusion of everything else. And that's really what you want.
Yeah.
You want to get away from all the bullshit in the world and all the rest of that. And that, so that was great. Builds up your confidence, gives you humility.
Yeah.
Particularly when you're starting to learn the guitar. I use the analogy of a toddler trying to pick up a Cheerio off of his high chair tray, and that your mind knows what your fingers, or what it wants your fingers to do, but your fingers aren't obeying. So it's very humbling from that standpoint, but again, very rewarding as well, which as you get older in life becomes more about attrition, losing things.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's friends, family, other people, but also the ability to do certain things, athletically or whatever that you might have been able to do before. So I looked at this as, packing something more into my life that I can really take into the future with me.
Yeah.
But I also, ironically, I got an email came across my desk from my health insurance company, and they said, look, we're offering a free pre-diabetes screening. And if you qualify based upon age, height, weight, body mass index, and family history, and I've got diabetes on both sides of my family.
Yeah.
You'll qualify for a free online weight management digital wellness thing called OMADA, OMADA, OMADA Health, and which I did, and it was fabulous, life-changing. I lost 30 pounds, learned a lot about nutrition. Changed the way I not only ate, but thought about food. Right now I weigh 40 pounds less than I did 20 years ago. I also decided to stop drinking, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
Ironically, looking back at an editorial piece I wrote for our newsletter, 20 years ago almost, I mentioned in that alcohol exacerbated my depression. It took me 18 years to do anything about it.
Yeah.
But
you got there though.
yeah, I did it, and I don't know whether, well, on a couple of different levels. I'm taking antidepressant medication, and I've scaled way back down to, from where I was. But nonetheless, alcohol is a depressant. And that just doesn't make any sense. Why would I take antidepressant medication and then drink a depressant? Beyond that, I don't know whether my metabolism changed over time, but it got to the point where, well, let's put it this way: I had an alcohol problem from a quantity standpoint, not frequency. When I could go, 2, 3, 4 weeks, whatever it was, without drinking alcohol. I didn't have any dependency on it. I didn't crave it. I didn't, but when I started, I had no off switch. I used, this was beer and wine. I never drank hard liquor or spirits, that kind of thing. Actually, I did years ago, but I learned that as a beer drinker who, goes like this, that I couldn't drink hard liquor. Yeah, so it got to the point where when I did drink, and I kind of joked with my family that the first beer is mouthwash. Once that went down, the others followed, and before you knew it, 3, 4 hours later, I was blacking out, and my wife would remind me the next morning. Do you remember saying this? No. Do you remember doing this? And unfortunately, I embarrassed her. I embarrassed myself.
Yeah.
And, that's okay when you're 25, but nobody likes an old drunk. Think about it. So I just said, you know what? And the other thing was that I had operated motor vehicles at times when I shouldn't have.
Right.
Many times over the years. And you're a little more strict over there, I think, than and up in Canada than we are in the States. But I'd gotten away with it.
Yeah.
And I looked at it myself like, okay, I'm a gambler. I just rolled craps. Let me take my winnings and walk away. Before, nobody's gotten hurt. I haven't gotten any, I haven't wound up in jail or in prison or had anything that, hung around my neck that I'd have to live with for the rest of my life. So I said, screw it. I'm just going to quit. There is one more thing with that, and this ties into my depression, was that it got to the point, and again, I don't know whether my metabolism changed or what, but got to the point where if I had 2 or 3 beers on say a Saturday night, I'd be okay the next day. Monday, the depression would kick in, and I would get into this depressive funk that could last till Thursday. Could last 3 or 4 days.
Yeah, and that's a long time. That's a long time out of your week.
Yeah, and why? Just to have a few beers? I mean, it was stupid. And I just said, this is insane. So Christmas 2 years ago, Christmas 2019, I said, that's it. I'm done. It was a little weird socially in the beginning, with family, friends. But when I explained to them, I said, number one, alcohol's not my friend.
Yeah.
I can't drink it anymore. So let me enjoy my ice water. Let me enjoy my coffee. I drink a lot of coffee. Moderation is not my strong suit. So if I'm going to do something, I generally do it big.
I had to give up the caffeine 6 or 7 months ago, simply because I couldn't. I was onto the energy drinks, and I was drinking 2 to 3 in the or 2 in the morning, and then one before a run in the afternoon every day. And it was just getting silly, Peter. I understand that 100%.
Yeah, I've never gotten into the Red Bulls and that stuff. I can't stand the taste of them, but I could see how, that would be almost like taking amphetamines, I would think.
It was, yeah, and it's a very strange experience. I don't know. I wouldn't describe myself as that I was addicted to energy drinks, but I certainly I experienced the caffeine, hangovers when I wasn't drinking. I'd try and have a day or two off the energy drinks, I'd get a headache. So for a period of a year or two, it was just easier to keep drinking them. But eventually it played havoc with my sleep pattern, amongst other things. But yeah, so one thing
I've rambled on quite a bit here today.
That's fine, Pete. No, that's fine. One thing
turning into a monologue.
I will ask, because I have asked a few people when I've done more alcohol specific podcasts, but how, maybe it's fair to you've described yourself as being in the sort of latter periods of your life. So potentially your experience with friends and family may have been easier when you said that in that Christmas of 2019, that's it, I'm done. I've had many people on here who've explained they've had a lot of support, but you do read and hear about pushback, certainly within the younger generation of people who want to stop drinking, but just can't quite do it because within a lot of their social scene is so alcohol orientated that in the end, it's just easier to drink, because the peer pressure is not worth it almost. But the reaction amongst friends and family was supportive for you, or like you described it as a little bit interesting?
Yeah, they were a little curious, I guess, in the beginning. Certainly there was no pushback.
Well, that's good.
I don't know why our society has makes alcohol so central to socializing. Whereas, again, ice water or, you don't hear about a bunch of guys getting together to drink coffee.
Yeah. And we said when we chatted on Saturday, I explained to you how in the UK, we are very much we sort of seem to go out at 7 in the evening, and the pubs used to close at 10:30, 11. They stay open a bit longer now. But certainly my generation, I used to go out at 7 o'clock and think I had about 4 hours drink window to get as much in as I could. And it's just the way us Brits do it. And I remember being in Australia in 2001 and drinking lager, but the Australians, who themselves like a beer, but many of them couldn't get their head round the speed at which I was trying to consume beer, because to them, they were sat on the porch on a Friday night after a week at work, and that if they have 2 beers or 20 beers, but they'll just take their beers when they're ready. But there's me, halfway through a can, where's the next one, looking over my shoulder, and why is everyone else not looking for the next one? And my British upbringing of the drinking culture, it did sort of shock almost to a sort of a country who likes a beer like Australia. I was quite surprised to see their reaction back then. But yeah, I don't know why alcohol is, or the need to consume it in such quantities is deemed so essential to a social event on many occasions, Peter.
Well, I never went out to bars. We don't really have pubs in the sense that you do over there. So unless we as a family or whatever, went out somewhere, when you go out to dinner, I would have, a couple of beers or a couple of glasses of wine or whatever. Yeah. But that was never really the problem. The problem was when we'd have people here at our home, have friends over for dinner or whatever. Families, when my daughters and their husbands are here, for the holidays or whatever. And you've got an unlimited supply.
Yeah.
I remember my birthday is the 4th of July, which is a big day here in the States.
Yeah.
But I remember one year we had, I don't know how this happened, but we had about 25 people showed up, and most of them were in their 20s. They were our friends from New Jersey came up. They've got three boys. The boys came with their girlfriends, and my daughters had friends here. And so Vermont is one of the capitals of craft beer.
Right.
And part of the problem is craft beer is not 4.5% anymore; it's 8%. So these people are arriving with these cases of these 16-ounce, 8% craft beers. And I remember at the end of that, we started about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And I used to have this thing you mentioned about when your can's half empty, where's the next one? I used to have this thing when my bottle got empty or my can, and cans are the new bottles now. But in any case, when it was empty, I'd go like this and blow into the top of it. And that was the signal that I needed another one. And one of my daughters or somebody would rush another one over to me, but it was bad. And, had a lot of fun, a lot of good times, a lot of laughs, but I just can't do it anymore. I mean, I've, again, the embarrassment I caused myself and my wife, not to mention people who I might have offended or, just by, losing your grip on what you say and what you do. And bad. It's not the kind of person I am. And unfortunately, alcohol made me that way.
Well, I mean, yes. Yeah, of course, Peter. But this is, the thing is that as I have myself, we have recognized that our relationship with alcohol is not a good one. And yeah, everything that we did in the past can look back on. It was pretty grim and pretty embarrassing, and but you've made such positive steps in sort of in your sobriety that I'm sure everyone around you is, can look back on the times you described with a wry smile, I'm sure. But I want to move forward a bit, or potentially backwards in a way, because we've sort of we've got our script, as so to speak. But when we mentioned depression, and you have been trying to raise awareness for course superintendents over in the States since I think as early as 2002, the article or 2003 that you referred to earlier, Peter.
Yes.
So how did it all come? Obviously, you've got your finger on the pulse within the turf industry. So the article, that was published in TURFNET back then was written anonymously by a course superintendent. But did you want to raise awareness and push this because you were being approached by many course superintendents, or you were hearing on the grapevine that people, or you were just noticing that it was a problem within the industry back then? So just sort of give us a rundown of that, if you could, Peter.
Yeah. Well, again, when I started TURFNET, the impact of job loss was very fresh in my mind, and that really rose to the surface amongst superintendents because I would see people get shown the door and their families uprooted.
Yeah.
Often for no good reason, other than that, there might have been a change in the board at the club, or, somebody's, whatever the reasons were. But, so this guy and their families are walking down the road. And I remember my brother-in-law, my wife's brother, didn't talk to me for 3 months after I lost my job because he didn't know what to say.
Oh, right.
Well, yeah. Well, how about reaching out, reaching out to somebody who's lost their job, just ask them how they're doing.
Yeah.
Do you want to meet for a beer, or do you want to meet for coffee or something? This kind of thing, because it's just something that's devastating. So I had that sort of stuck in the back of my mind, and I would see the stresses that superintendents or course managers, whatever you want to call them, had to deal with, certainly here in the States, very long hours, irrationally long hours. During this period of time from the mid-90s, to today, really, the increase in expectation from the golfers as to what they desired, and unfortunately, what they desired was often not what they could afford in terms of that kind of thing, and so superintendents had to deal with that. The rising expectations. Not only that, but then there were increased environmental and regulatory things. They'd have to, the record keeping and pesticides and new diseases, new insects. I mean, you guys got your fill of that situation over there with the leather jackets and everything this year.
Yeah, it's potentially the next industry, or the industry pandemic, if you will. It is leading to many a sleepless night for the poor UK-based head greenkeeper, I'm afraid.
And that was primarily as a result of having pesticides removed from your arsenal, correct?
Correct. Yeah, they pretty much removed. Well, they did take away anything to combat the problem. Yeah.
So, and then I would hear of isolated instances of a superintendent getting in trouble with drink or drugs even. And then I started to get some, and all this time I was kind of wearing my heart on my sleeve and letting my own experiences hang out there. One of the, prior to publishing that article and my column about depression back in several years earlier, I had written one of the classics was Fired. Let's all say the F word, fired, which I guess over there would be let's all say the S word, sacked. But and that was a 4 or 5 page treatise on how to deal with it, how to see the warning signs, how to pick yourself up by the bootstraps and move forward. So I counseled a lot of people privately and some in our forum as to how to deal with that, what to expect. When I heard that somebody had lost their job, first thing I did was send them a PDF of that article.
Yeah.
Because it pretty much spelled it all out. And so I've always had an interest in the mental health of the golf course community. And again, wearing my heart on my sleeve, a lot of that is just the fact that I never really cared what anybody felt, what anybody thought about me as a person. If they feel anything negative about me because I'm talking about getting fired or being depressed or whatever it happens to be, that's more their problem than it is mine. And if I always felt that if somebody can gain the courage to seek help or to call me, whatever it is, to get started on that road to either sobriety or medication or navigating the mental health.
I mean, it might be something as simple as a chat with someone like yourself, Peter, who can be realistic with them. And if you can get that superintendent to understand that he needs to step away for 5 hours a week, or he needs to leave, if he can leave the office an hour and a half early twice a week and spend time with his partner, his children, some friends of his who aren't in the turf industry who finish work, it's understanding that if whatever the problem is, like you've said in another article I read, is understanding what works for you in a sense, but a lot of people don't see that. It has to be gently sort of pointed out to them. And we know within the turf industry, the expectation, as you've, explained in the last 5 minutes, the
other thing is that superintendents are often their own worst enemies when it comes to this, because everybody wants to be the best.
Right.
And the problem is, one of the problems is that, they push themselves into working 60 hours a week.
Yeah.
Which is insane. There's a superintendent, Chris Trittabaugh.
Yeah.
TURFNET guy. He's at Hazeltine National out in Minnesota, hosted the Ryder Cup a few years ago.
Yeah.
He has the personal courage to buck the trend, so to speak. He'll go to the national conference and wear jeans and sneakers.
I like someone like that.
He walks the golf course every morning.
Yeah.
He doesn't take a cart, he walks it. For a couple of different reasons. You see it differently when you walk, but you also, that is his quiet time. He has a sofa in his office that there are times he said he'll shut the door and take a 20-minute nap when he needs to.
Yeah.
There are many clubs or golf courses, whatever, that wouldn't be acceptable.
Yeah,
for whatever reason.
Yeah, that would be. He might find himself experiencing the F word.
Well, yeah, I mean, or within your own staff. I mean, look, the guy's goofing off in there. He's sleeping in there. We're out breaking our ass out here streaming or whatever, and he's whether that's justified or not. Here's another little tip for you: if you're going to walk the golf course, try walking it backwards from the 18th green to the first tee.
Yeah, you end up in bunkers at our place because you don't see them.
Well, yeah, but you see the course from a completely different viewpoint that you might not ordinarily, certainly when you're playing golf. But
yeah.
So I've always encouraged or used our forum, again, because it's private. Social media has taken the wind out of our sails, quite a bit. Just with the limited amount of time everybody has every day to spend on this kind of stuff. But nonetheless, you can't have the conversations on social media that we can, because you're limited to 280 characters on Twitter or whatever the heck it is. And I think also the membership fee over the years has sort of acted like a filter, in that the guys who are in there know that they can trust the opinions and the experiences that they're going to get from the other guys. Where social media, social media is fine. I like Twitter. I hate Facebook. I don't go on Facebook at all. But you don't know. Really, anybody can go on Facebook or on Twitter or whatever, create an account. And there are some that do that they're anonymous, and I try to block all of them. But they're not doing anybody any favors, throwing grenades from the weeds, that kind of thing.
We have We have a few secret. Well, we had a secret greenkeeper. We had some secret turf help going on, which I think to a point early on, they were actually quite useful for some people, but then they got a bit carried away with the situation, and the followers were going up, and the questions being posed and the fingers being pointed all got a little bit ridiculous at times. And it was, I think it's probably about a year ago now that it disappeared, one particular account that had got a little bit, I don't know if big for its boots, but it was picking fights that didn't need picking within an industry that is able to fall out with itself on social media quite easily. I've found that over here. But
it's interesting that you mentioned that, because I've said for a long time that the turf industry, by and large, is, well, it's unique in a lot of ways, but one, it's self-policing.
Yeah.
The assholes aren't going to make it in this industry very long, either as superintendents or as salespeople or whatever else.
Yeah.
You know, they're going to get called on that and ostracized.
Yeah.
Really. So, you know, and the other thing about our industry is that, you know, you guys as course managers or whatever are not competitive at all until you're competing for an open or a job vacancy. But if you put 100 guys in a room, 99 of them will tell any one of the others anything they want to know about how they run their business.
Yeah.
Which, when you think about it, that's remarkable.
Yeah. Yeah.
You won't find other businesses or industries like that, in my experience anyway.
No, I think that's very well said, Peter. And as our time is nearing the end, this has been a fantastic conversation, but I just want to give you a few minutes at the end, Peter. This is going to go out, obviously, through my podcast, but I think it's going to act as part of a new initiative that you've created through TURFNET. You've called it Me Maintenance. So while you're here, it'd be a perfect opportunity just for you potentially. I think we understand why you're doing it, but if you want to sort of share with people who are going to watch, I listened to the fantastic first episode with Mike Le Cavalier up in Canada, and his sort of rise from the ruins, if you will. I apologize, Mike, if that doesn't come across as well.
I called him a raging alcoholic, which he kind of said, well, yeah.
Yeah, I did. That was quite early on in the conversation as well, Peter, wasn't it? But just talk us through it. Can you let us know any little secrets, what you've got coming up, or how you see it panning out? Just talk us through it quickly, Peter, before we end.
Well, Me Maintenance, and if you look at the logo I created for it, it has two thumbs going this way.
Yeah.
And we're, you know, historically, superintendents, course managers, whatever, have been concerned with taking care of the golf course, taking care of the golfers, taking care of their customers, taking care of their staff, and themselves, and unfortunately, sometimes their family kind of winds up last on that list. So I came up with this idea, and I think by and large, the industry is warming up to the fact that all is not peachy keen and a bowl of cherries.
Yeah.
If you listen to some of the poobahs among the alphabets, you know, they want the image of the golf course superintendent to be squeaky clean and, you know, everybody wearing FootJoys and talking into the radio and this kind of stuff. And the reality is, this is a very, very tough business. You mentioned in the beginning that I've never worked on a golf course, and I haven't. But
your words,
arguably, after conversing and interacting with so many good superintendents over the course of 28 years, that there's probably nobody that knows more about the psyche, if you will, or the ups and downs of managing a golf course. So in my estimation, the industry is ready to look at some of this stuff, personal well-being, mental health included. There's a group of superintendents in the States and maybe elsewhere too, because obviously Twitter goes everywhere, but it was sort of organized by Kyle Callahan down in South Carolina of, I think they call it Turf Professionals Weight Loss Group or something like that. And they've got, I don't know how many they've got, but it's approaching 100, I think, guys who are, they're submitting their weight every day, and somebody's compiling it all, and God bless them. I mean, it's this is an example of how peer pressure can be a good thing if it's looked at as peer support rather than peer pressure. So that's going on. Paul McCormick, again, up in no relation, but up in Prince Edward Island, Canada, Eastern Canada, he again has brought meditation to the superintendents, mindfulness, being aware of, I've always sort of used the term keeping one foot on the ground. Staying grounded during or while everything else is pulling you in 1,000 different directions. So I think the industry is ready for perhaps a concerted effort. Paul and I hosted a 6-week, hour-and-a-half, once a week for 6 weeks last year, mindfulness/meditation discussion group where we had about I think about a dozen superintendents. We did it on Zoom, and it was great. Every one of them to a man, and they were all men. I don't want to snub the ladies out there because they're obviously an important and up and coming component of our industry. But that was great, and the guys clamored for more. So we are going to do that again. Paul and Chris Trittabaugh, who I just mentioned, are running I didn't really look at the schedule, but it's a leadership thing that's organized through the Carolinas Golf Course Superintendents Association. Right. And that's coming up fairly quickly. I think it's a once a week thing also. But so what I'm trying to do is to tell the stories, or to provide a platform where individuals can tell the stories of the things they've dealt with. Mike LeCavalier in Montreal, again, was a raging drunk, and he admits it. Somehow or another, he got away with it for a long time. Finally hit rock bottom, and decided to make a change, and that's been almost 4 years now. Concurrently got into lifting weights and working out the gym, and that's his new drug. And he looks great. He's sober. He's happy. Turned his life around. Well,
let's finish today's episode on those fantastic words, Peter. I mean, there's so much more we could have potentially covered. I think we will probably get together again and cover some other areas in greater detail, Peter. But I think today, those fantastic words, he's turned his life around, he's sober and he's happy. That goes for, myself, yourself, Mike, anyone else who's watching this, maybe struggling, please reach out. When I do my edit this end, I will put all the necessary email addresses for myself, Peter, TURFNET. So, Peter, any final words before we head off?
Well, that was Mike's major thrust at the end of my conversation with him, which is on turfnet.com. If anybody wants to go listen to it, it's worth the time. His thoughts were just ask for help. I mean, take that first step. You don't have to be a hero. You don't have to be no man's an island, all this kind of stuff. There are people who want to help. have been there, been down in the mud and the muck and the dirt. And it doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt to ask for help. So that's that first step that's the hardest part.